Hi, my name is Elizabeth. Thank you very much for all your work, and you, of course, Kathleen, and what a cool audience you guys all are. Just want to say we're pretty cool too. I just loved what you had to say tonight, especially about partnerships, and of course you brought that up right away. I'm sure we were all thinking about that. I'm curious about how you choose partners. You've chosen partners both on your supplier end and also on your buyer end, and now you're choosing a for-profit partner. Do you think you are partnering sort of because of serendipity, a little bit of that, or a little bit of research, or what brings you to make a decision to go with one partner like Skin Cream, or where you could have been doing, something else, or because we need to engage partners too. Is your advisement about that?
Sure, and I should clarify. So the Lakshmi project started as an idea we had. We realized that, sorry, my statement necklace is interfering with mic. They let me keep it on, which I was really excited about. It's messing with the mic. So the business model behind SamaSource, and what's really cool about SamaSource is that we are able to offset some of our costs through these contracts that we get from big companies. So we can hire low-income people to do this work. Their work product is valued by for-profit companies. Was really interesting to explore further, and we thought, is there another category of impact sourcing that we might pursue that has higher margins that would be able to cover our costs not only of that business but also of SamaSource? The margins are pretty slim in the work that we do, and thank you. And that's meant that we can't cover all of our operating costs through our earned revenue. So we still have to go out and ask for donations every year. And my ultimate goal as a social entrepreneur is to build a self-sustaining enterprise. It's not going to throw off massive profits for anyone. We're going to reinvest any profit we do end up making into the company. But with SamaSource, the reality is the margins on that kind of work are so low that it'll never cover our operating costs. And so the hunt to find a new industry that would cover those costs led us to Lakshmi. Luxury skincare is really interesting because the margins are in some cases 80% gross margins, which are insane. So we thought, what if we built a luxury skincare company whose sole purpose was to fund our nonprofit work? That could be really interesting. And it just so happened that serendipity led to us finding this ingredient in northern Uganda, an hour away from where we have one of our SamaSource centers, and that led us to creating this separate brand. So actually Lakshmi is part of Sama Group. It's incorporated differently and it has different investors. We realized we could capitalize it better as a for-profit, but it's part of the family of impact sourcing enterprises. When we think about partners for our nonprofit work, we're extremely selective. So we have an application process on our website for what we call SamaSource delivery centers. So the centers where workers do the work in Kenya and Uganda are local partners of ours. We just opened up our own delivery center that we fully manage as an experiment, and it's going really well. I was just there in Nairobi. We have about 200 people there. For us, it's really opportunistic. So we get people who apply, we look at their ability to recruit people from our target demographic, we audit them for what they pay our workers. And in the US for Sama School, we have a similar program. We look at their ability to recruit our target demographic and to deliver our training successfully. Some of our partners include the YMCA, College Track. We're just about to open with College Track in the Bayview, which is an amazing organization. Job Train is another really successful workforce development group that we partner with in East Palo Alto. And in New York, we're getting funded by the Robin Hood Foundation to work with some of their grantees. So sometimes it even comes from our funders.
I'm going to move over to this side of the room. Raise your hand if you have questions. Dominique will find you over here. We'll just go back and forth from each side of the room until we run out of time. So thank you.
Thank you so much. This is really inspirational. Excuse me. My name is Jenny Prisk, and 5 years ago when I was in Uganda, I began providing or paying for education for a daughter there. She's in her 5th year of school now and wanted to be a doctor. I don't think that's going to happen. She's based just outside Kampala. Can she go to SamaSource and meet with your representatives there to discuss a job possibility?
Absolutely. We have a center in Kampala and another one in Gulu, which is much farther, but you can see me afterwards and I'll make sure that her application gets submitted to our local center. So
Win, we're going to go in this side of the room. Who's next? Oh, we have one mic? Okay, we'll go here, and then we'll come over to the other side of the room.
Thank you very much. One of the questions when you work here in San Diego, is there going to be a legal citizenship requirement?
Oh, that is such a good question. Very timely. Right now, we don't personally have a legal citizenship requirement, and as far as it's kind of up to the person who gets trained to figure out how they're going to get employed on those platforms. The challenge is that many of those platforms require documentation of some kind to be able to be sort of certified as a worker. So for example, we just launched this partnership with Uber, and I think you do have to have documentation as a citizen to be an Uber driver, but that's a huge issue. My personal view is that this might upset some people, but there's no real moral salience to nationality. We happen to be born where we happen to be born. And what really matters is that we're all human. So my own view and my utopia would be, I don't care where you're from. If you want to work, you should be able to do work, and you should be able to enter a platform and by your own merits get a job. So I hope we're able to spread that.
And let me share with the audience that while Leila and I have been colleagues and friends for years, we have not even thought about how we could create a program in San Diego, although I'm delighted that Leila has an interest in San Diego. But I think we're a little bit away from being able to say what this will look like. But thanks for the question, and we can certainly keep that in mind. Okay, I think we're back to this side of the room. Win. Hands up. I see one over here. Thank you.
Thank you, Leila. This is very inspiring. And I guess I just wanted to know who or what has inspired you to do what you've done, the Changemakers, or what are the things within you that have allowed you to do so much at such a young age?
Well, I feel like there's always miles to go. So I feel like it's funny. Somebody once described what we do to his children, and he said, my youngest son said, well, you said there were 4 billion people living in poverty, and then you have 27,000 people on one of your slides, so doesn't that mean that you're a failure? And in a way that like only 14-year-old boys can articulate well. And I really think that each person we help is an infinite victory. And for me, that way of thinking is largely inspired by some of the leaders that my father, who went to Jesuit school in India, exposed me to. We were given all these lectures about Indian history at home, and Mahatma Gandhi, who plays a really strong role in my family. My great uncle was a photographer for the Communist Party of India and photographed all of these revolutionaries in the 40s and 50s. And so for me, a lot of that history of revolution against a quite oppressive British regime inspired me to think about other regimes that might be oppressive, like our economic system, and ways that we might peacefully and nonviolently and through the power of our words and ideas fight for basic dignity for people. And I'll say that the other person who's really inspired me is Muhammad Yunus, the winner of the 2006 Nobel Peace Prize, who has written unbelievably compelling books about social business and this new paradigm of using our market-driven forces and our morality to fight poverty in combination rather than the way we've done it before with nonprofits over here and for-profits over here. And I think there's a whole new world of organizations that we can form using this paradigm of social business, and he's really the leader in that field.
Just a reminder, we're also taking questions on Twitter. So we have a question from Twitter right now.
Thank you.
What can women do locally to show that underprivileged girls, that there are opportunities for women in leadership and the tech sector in San Diego?
I get asked this question a lot. And I do have to say, it's so nice to speak to a group of women. I'm so not used to this. Normally tech conferences are like 2 women in the audience that I can look to when I make my very gendered comments. I can't speak for everyone, but I will say that what's made a difference for me is making the experience really relevant. So whenever I talk to young women, I talk about my experiences personally, and I try to show them examples of women just like them who've been able to achieve things in the world that they're interested in. I met a woman who's a computer scientist, and I immediately thought of Ada Lovelace, and a friend of mine who even named his daughter Ada after Ada Lovelace. The importance of bringing those examples into our homes and teaching our children and our friends' children about those examples of women who have blazed a trail in fields where women are not so common. And I always think of that Black Googler example. Like, how strange is it that someone who lives in San Francisco, a 30-minute drive from the Google headquarters, could not know that there are people like him who work at that company? I think a lot of women suffer under the same illusion. They don't understand that there are women just like them who've made it to the top of these fields, and it's really our responsibility to make sure that those stories are told and to share them as widely as possible.
At the end of tonight's program, in very and inconvenient truth fashion, we're going to show you some things that we think you can just do locally as the audience and members of San Diego, that things like just be a mentor to a young woman, how you can make sure that as all of you think about the role you have to play in San Diego, maybe there'll be one thing on that list that will strike you and say, I can do that. And we hope that all of you walk away thinking, I can do that, just one thing. Let's go back over to this side of the room, and Dominique's got somebody in the back.
Hi there, my name's Christy Grover from Chelsea's Light, and I just want to say, you rock. This is awesome.
Thank you.
I mean, your passion is what changed the world. And so being a woman in tech for so many years, I've switched. I mean, thank you so much for all you're doing. But I was talking to Connie Matsui earlier, and she wanted me to mention a program that we're doing here in San Diego. It's called the Changemaker League. We met with Superintendent Cindy Martin and head of the Girl Scouts, and what we're doing is we're taking the idea that youth can change the world now. They don't have to wait. They're changing the world now, and give them the tools to do that. So my question for you is, how do you reach and empower the next generation, reach out to K through 12?
That is such a good question, and thank you for the kind words. That really means a lot. We struggle with that ourselves. I'm always telling our team, we've got to do more on social media, and we're not even on Snapchat, and that's where all of the under 18 people are. They think Facebook is for old people. I thought Facebook was the cool thing to be on, but apparently it's
not
Snapchat.
Anymore.
So it's tough, but I think the best way to reach that community, and we use a lot of the lessons we've learned working with people who make less than $2 a day, which for me is a very foreign community. I grew up in a middle class, town in San Pedro. So trying to understand their experience was a really important part of serving that community. And for me, that meant spending a lot of time with that community. So I lived in a village where everybody made $2 a day for 8 months. But I think the more time you spend listening to people, the better you can build programming that appeals to them. And so we've done a lot of focus group type work, including here in the US with our US population. We took a lot of the students who've gone through our programs and brought them back in and asked them questions and got their opinions on everything from what should we put in a tweet that might appeal to you, to where should we advertise our program, to what kind of language appeals to you. And we use a lot of the methods that technology firms use to understand their customer base for our work. So I would recommend that approach.
Does anybody notice how I walked up here with paper and a pen, and Leila walked up with a hand device? It's just, as we think about the differences between how a 50-something, somebody in her late 50s like myself, and Leila, who is in her early 30s, the population that is in their teens and their 20s are thinking very differently than even Leila does or that I do. So as much as we can open ourselves to listening and learning about what's interesting to them will really help us to ensure that more of these students are interested in careers in technology and other forms.
We've seen some movement around what's called BCorporations, benefit corporations, that are companies that have an overt social mission. We're a little bit different. So our nonprofit, Sama Group, is a 501c3. Any revenue we earn from our activities, like our work, our digital work, is all program related. So it's not like we're running a side business that's subsidizing our nonprofit work within Sama Group. All of the work we do contributes to our social mission. Again, I'll use the analogy of Goodwill. Goodwill's mission is to empower people through work, and they train people to do work in stores, selling goods that people donate. And doing that work brings them revenue that offsets the cost of their operation, but doing that work and that including that revenue is part of their whole social mission. So they're not taxed on the revenue because it's part of their mission, if that makes sense. Lakshmi is a separate for-profit company, and the way we've linked the two is we made a donation, a stock donation of Lakshmi stock to the nonprofit. So no nonprofit resources are used for the for-profit. That's totally funded separately. We have investors who put the money up for Lakshmi, and the only way that the only direction that stuff can go is from the for-profit to the nonprofit, if that makes sense. So there's no resources of the nonprofit that can be used by the for-profit. And the way you can set that up is through a legal structure that makes sure that there are arm's length agreements. So if our head of marketing at Sama Group wants to do something that is involved with Lakshmi, she literally bills the company for her time, and the company pays the nonprofit back. So there are ways you can do that, and we worked with an amazing lawyer who has a lot of expertise in this area. So if you can set up the structure right, I think it's a really interesting way forward. And I think the traditional division of nonprofit versus for-profit is starting to get reimagined. That said, we have to be really careful that we're not just watering down our nonprofit social missions in service of making some people wealthy. So it's really important to keep arm's length and to make sure that if you do want to pursue a hybrid, that you're doing so in an ethical way that doesn't misuse funds. So it means a lot of investment in accounting and legal structuring, et cetera, to make sure that everything's above board and done well. And it's probably not appropriate for every organization. We're now big enough that we can afford those costs, and we had funders who were interested in exploring that with us and willing to foot the bill. So
I think we're on
hopefully
this
that helps.
side of the room now. Dominique, thank you.
Thank you, Leila. I'm Grace Michael. I'm with the University of San Diego Center for Peace and Commerce, and we're focused on developing students as social entrepreneurs. So I wish my students were with me here tonight. And my question is, what advice would you give your 21-year-old self or emerging student entrepreneurs as they're trying to come into this social innovation space? What do you think they need to hear?
Probably my number one piece of advice would be to take on less debt. And I also kind of ruined my credit score for a couple of years because I put a tuition payment on a credit card when I was an undergrad. So that's a whole separate issue around student loan reform. I would say, one thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is that you can start an organization, you can essentially moonlight. And I learned this when I was management consulting only towards my later stint at the firm, only towards the last part of my career there. But I think there's a lot of opportunity to get a job, make your money doing the job, and do something social entrepreneurial on the side until it gets big enough or until you're able to win the funding to do it full time. And I think a lot of people think that they have to quit everything and move to a futon in Silicon Valley to make their dreams come true. And I think that might work if, in my case, my parents didn't have any money, but I was well networked and I had a friend whose futon I could stay on. And I had a good network of people from undergrad that could support me. Not everybody has that. And so I think it's really important for people to pursue their dreams and also be realistic and realize you don't have to quit everything. You can do something on the side and slowly that can grow. And I've seen that work for a lot of people who started their businesses, while they had a 9-to-5 and they put in the extra hours. Sarah Blakely from Spanx is a great example, if you guys know that company. She's really inspiring, partly because she was working in a different job and she pulled together $5,000 to get her company started, and she now still owns 100% of that company. We have a lot of these examples in the for-profit world, few of them in the nonprofit world, and I think it's important to bring those out. Another great example is Muhammad Yunus, who started Grameen Bank while he was a professor of economics and ran that as a little experiment while he was teaching until it got big enough and attracted enough attention for him to run that full time. So it's a really viable option for people, and it means that they don't have to sacrifice their dreams while they're, working for the man or the woman, hopefully.
So that your students, as well as anyone that wasn't able to join us tonight, doesn't miss this opportunity to hear Leila speak, our website within a week will have a summary, a video of this evening. So please ask your students to go out and check out the video on sdfoundation.org. I think we're over on this side of the room. Dominique, thank you.
And we're going to take our last question for the evening.
Okay.
One of the things that strikes me, and it's more of a comment than really a question, is here in San Diego, the San Diego Women's Foundation, where we have lots of members here tonight, next year is funding employment readiness. And it's really, to me, disheartening that you folks, I don't believe, applied, probably because we didn't get the word out on Facebook, or are you on Snapchat? But whatever. But how do we do a better job of getting organizations that have had such great success knowledge of our grants?
Well, I wish we had known, and if it's still possible, we can submit a rush application. Our team is very familiar with those. That's a great question. There's so many broken things about fundraising in the nonprofit context. I think there's like communication challenges, and I think overall, as a society, we focus so much on the for-profit sector and what's possible, and I think we've left out a lot of the nonprofit world. So I really am not sure what the best way to communicate those grants would be. I would say, like, press announcements, and then reaching out to targeting organizations that you think might be a good fit or who are making a big splash in the workforce development space. But it's tough. I mean, it's a very old school sector.
It is. One of the things that I would say is that what we've created here tonight is a network. And I will tell you, I'm a member of the San Diego Women's Foundation. I knew Leila did this work, and I didn't connect the dots at the opportunity when I knew that was the funding. And I should have.
Because she's not on Snapchat.
That's right. I absolutely should have. But I think this is a reminder to all of us that every day in our lives, things come by our desk and we all feel so very busy with everything that's happening that we should be doing, that we do have an opportunity to say, let me just take a moment and think about who I should tell about that. Who in this room tonight, who outside of this room tonight, in my network, might want to know about this. And I certainly think that having Leila have known about this would have been fabulous, but that won't be the first opportunity, I hope, because this is something that I think that in San Diego we can all get behind, especially given that our Greater San Diego vision told us that we're all concerned about work and jobs here in San Diego. So there'll be more conversations. Thank you for your time. Leila will be here for a bit. I did promise to take her out to dinner tonight, so don't keep her too long. She's had a long day, but I know there are several of you who would like to ask a few questions tonight. A few things. I want to be sure that you look at the board and remind yourselves that what can we do when we leave here tonight? Well, a few things. We can mentor a future leader. We can support SCR 62 for board diversity, and each of you hopefully picked up that resolution that shares information from the McKinsey report that shows that organizations that have women on their boards actually perform better. There's a study done by McKinsey, it's proven. This resolution is important to all of us because the number one recommendation for getting more women on boards is about our networks. You know a woman who sits on a board. You are a woman who sits on the board. Express interest in recommending to other women and recommending to the board that women sit on the boards you sit on. Oftentimes, nonprofit boards are the best way for women to get the experience they need to be able to sit on for-profit boards in the future. So learn about SCR 62. It is more than likely that we'll have a convening of women specifically around SCR 62. Donate to support civic engagement. Our Center for Civic Engagement, there is a way that you can donate directly to us so that we can continue these conversations and we have the ability to move forward and take action following these conversations. Join a giving circle or a leadership group, the San Diego Women's Foundation, the Latino Giving Circle. There are very many ways that you can get involved with your time, your talent, and your treasure. Or just do something simple tomorrow when you go to work. Compliment a colleague on her work. Let her know that you appreciate what she does every single day, because we all get so busy we forget to say, great job tonight, Leila. Thank you for the work you do every single day.
Likewise.